Everybody, good morning. Welcome to CEO Connect. It is good to have you with. My name's Eric Hatch, and I run training for leaders. So if you are a leader, if you are privileged and have the opportunity to lead your family, to lead your team, I am here to hopefully be a little bit of light in that chaotic darkness. Good to have you with us. This is hosted at Real Academy. Real is a brokerage I'm a part of, and we have people that aren't with Real that join us as well. And we're just happy to have our guests with us. I'm really, really excited about what we're going to dive into today, because today is a culmination of the last 18 years of things that I've learned. I've been in this industry now for 18 years, and I have made so many mistakes. And I've also made some really, really, really great choices that have helped to propel and compel all of these things. I wanted to take all of it and put it into a framework to look specifically at some of the little nuance pieces that so many of us miss. I knew how to sell a bunch of houses, and I don't intend on teaching you how to sell houses today. If you don't know how to sell houses, if you don't know how to hire people, if you don't know how to train people, those are different classes for different days. And I'll go down those as we do this week in and week out. But today is all about working smarter, not harder. Today is about the little nuanced pieces in our business of things that we often overlook. And I'm going to take a real life scenario of somebody that I coach, and I've taken all of their personal information off of there, so you won't know who I'm speaking of. But I've taken all their personal information off of there. But we're going to take a look at their numbers. And I think that numbers, there's a story behind all the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. And so we're going to take a look at what and how we measure all this. So I want to lay out a couple of ground rules here. Ground rule number one is that if you come into this conversation thinking that you're crushing it, I think this is going to be a waste of time for you. Because if we can show up and say, man, I got to get better with my numbers, I got to get better with understanding these little intricacies of my business, these ins and these outs, we're going to be in good space. We're in good company. So that's the first rule. Rule number two is this information that I'm sharing, please don't go and try to figure out like, well, who is it that Eric's coaching? And like, don't just try to go into that rat hole, because that is a hole for rats. And so we'll just be very clear on that. Number three, we have to understand that I have a couple of rules when it comes to how to pay people. If you are the team leader, and everybody here, I believe, are team leaders. If you're the team leader, I believe you should be paying yourself in three buckets. Please write these down. There's three buckets you should be paying yourself as a team leader. Bucket number one is you should be paying yourself as a CEO. That is a salary. Now, that salary doesn't need to be a $200,000 a year salary. If you have a smaller team, I'll use Pete Kaima as an example. If you have a smaller team, paying yourself a large salary, although it can be a part of a strategy, and I know there's tax benefits and other things when you choose to do that, if you pay yourself a large salary, it's going to throw off some of these numbers. And so just understand, if you're a team doing under $1 million a year in GCI, your salary should be under probably $75,000. If you're a $1 to $3 million team, I think that your salary can be 75 to 150. And if you're over a $3 million team, your salary can be over $150,000. Now, traditionally, if you're taking a salary like that, you're not in production. If you are in production, you have to take a look to say, if you are gone from this earth tomorrow and someone's going to come in and fill your role as CEO of the company, how many hours a week will that pay? If you're Pete Kaima with a smaller team, that's not a 40-hour-a-week job to be CEO. It's probably a 15-hour-a-week job, which is why a $50,000 salary makes a little more sense. Please nod if you're with me on this and if this makes sense as rule number one of how to pay yourself. Okay. Rule number two of how to pay yourself is you should pay yourself a commission, which is the same as what you pay your agents. The commission should be the same as what you pay your agents. So if you're on a 50-50 split with your agents and it's a $10,000 commission, that means that Pete Kaima, the realtor, gets $5,000 and the Kaima real estate team gets $5,000. Your numbers will be skewed if you don't do your numbers like this. In fact, so many people I've seen boast to be like, yeah, I make like a 45% profit on my team, but they're putting every dime of that $10,000 commission into that team bucket. And when you do that, it is now you're unable to see the financial health of your business. And if you can't see the financial health of your business, you can't make active decisions, whether to red light or green light dollars and cents. Okay. Please give me a thumbs up if that makes sense for number 2 on how to pay yourself. Number 1 is you pay yourself a salary. Number 2 is you pay yourself commission, the same as you would pay your agents. And that comes out of the team kitty. The third way you make money is profit. Third way you make money is profit. After all is said and done, how much cash is remaining for your team? And I'm going to break down all of this for you with great intricacy to help you try to stay in line. If you have a current target profit margin based on paying yourself as a CEO, based on paying yourself commission for your personal production, if you have a target profit number, would you type that into the chat box of the target profit percentage you want your team to hit annually? And I know some months will be 10% and some months will be 50%. And like it goes all over. Dan is at 30%. Dan, that's a huge profit margin. I love that. I love that. I love that. If you're paying yourself in those other 2 ways, that's a ton. Add 15%. That's a smaller, but actually pretty realistic number. Is anybody else? Dan's not paying himself commission. Okay. Yeah. Dan, if we pull those numbers out and we have you pay yourself, and it's a really easy equation to do, is you take a look at what your GCI was over the last 12 months and then take half of that out of your company profit. Right. And then you're going to say, well, this is what my team is actually profiting. Here is what is true of all of this. We're not making enough money. It's what's true. You know what else is true? Is that our agents aren't making enough money. Both things have to happen. I was on a coaching call the other day, and this was a really interesting aha. I'm talking to my guy, and he's like, Eric, I've ran my entire business for the last 30 years with a Zig Ziglar mentality. The Zig Ziglar mentality is you can have everything in life you want if you help enough others get what they want. What he's saying is, I'm paying my agents as much as I possibly can. And he's like, but I feel like I'm losing right now. Do any of you feel that way? Any of you feel like you're paying your agents as much as you can, but you feel like you're losing? It's because you're working hard, but you're not working smart. And in this time, talking with my coaching client, I say to him, I said, well, Zig Ziglar's right, but you're missing the oxygen mask on your airplane analogy before that. You have to put your oxygen mask on before you help anybody else. So if you can have everything in life you want, if you help enough others get what they want, that does not mean that we are financially irresponsible with our business. It means that we pay our agents as much as we possibly can. And we have to make sure that we're running a healthy business in order to pay our agents as much as we can. Do you believe it to be true? You need to put a yes or no in the chat box here in just a moment. Do you believe it to be true that you can make great profit and your agents can make great profit? Do you believe it to be true? Yes or no? Okay. A lot of yeses. A lot of yeses. Maybe. Yeah. Mercy, thank you for the honesty on that. It's an honest maybe. Is maybe you can pay your agents a ton and you can make a ton. The problem are so vast. I want to talk about Pete Kaima had a question here. He said, does the red book is MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. It is the Bible of building a real estate team. Here's what MREA says. Okay. It talks first about cost of goods sold, or COGS. It says you pay a listing agent 20%, you pay a buyer agent 40%, and that leaves 30% as the average cost of goods sold. So for every dollar that comes in, 30% of that goes to commission. It then says that you should have 30% expenses. And there's 3 expense categories. You need to write this down. You need to memorize this. You have people, you have lead gen / marketing, and you have overhead. Those 3 categories add up to being a total of 30% for expenses. That leaves a 40% profit margin. Now, that means you're paying yourself a commission of 20 or 40% on each deal. That means that the company profits 40%. And gang, I've been in this game for a minute. And do you know how many teams I've seen profit 40%? 0. That have healthy cultures that feel like if you pay your agents on average 30%, are they winning? I mean, if you're doing everything for them, yeah, but like, I'm not confident that they're winning. And so we have to have both things in mind as we build this. You have to win. Your oxygen mask has to go on first, and your team has to win. So if that's the foundation that we're going to work, I'm going to go to a spreadsheet here. I need you to interrupt me and ask questions. I need you to throw all sorts of thoughts and feelings, put it in the chat box. Do not let this just be a presentation today, because it will be rough for all of us. Also, I'm not confident I'm going to get through everything with great accord. And so there's a really good chance we're going to do this dance again next week. Okay. With that being said, I will share with you this spreadsheet. You'll get this at the end. I'll give you the link. And the reason why I have to say at the end is so you don't just take it and leave right now. Ha, look at that. Buying time. All right. This is, and I will zoom in on this so that everybody can see a little bit more. Boop, boop, boop. This is the 6-month breakdown of one of my coaching clients. It is a husband and wife duo, and they run a team. They've ran a team for a long time. Do not let your eyes go past what I'm showing you, okay? Let's take a look here. They've done a total of 115 transactions through the first 6 months of the year. They're averaging 19 transactions a month. Can we round up and say they do 20 transactions a month, right? Pretty easy. Take a look. Their business is balanced with 60 listings, 55 buyers. That's a really balanced business. Most of you are probably 70% buyers and 30% listings. Most of you. Doesn't mean all of you, but most of you are that. And so we see this rough breakdown of things. Now, let me take all of that and let's just digest for a minute. What stories are you telling yourself based on what you see with what I just shared with you? Unmute yourself. I want to hear from at least 3 people of what assumptions you're making or what stories you're telling yourself. I'm going to put that screen back up there, but I need you to unmute yourself. And I want to hear from at least 3 of you of what stories you are hearing or telling based on what you see on the screen. Well, this is rough. Dan, you're
I'm not sure I understand the question, Eric. I'd love to answer, but I'm not sure I understand what you're asking us to.
Okay. Like, does this appear to be a healthy, balanced business? Are you asking yourself, well, how many agents do they have? Are you asking yourself what length of time these agents have been on the team? Are you asking yourself what kind of production are the team leaders doing? Does that make a little more sense?
Yep.
Okay, so ask some questions or make some assumptions based on what you see here.
I was just going to say this is a really well-balanced sheet. I just need to know how many agents and how many people are helping this to understand it better. But on the flip side, I just go, wow, I kind of want those numbers for my own self. So I just kind of want to know how to build to that because it's very impressive, the 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this a 24-person team or a 4-person team?
This is the husband and wife are in production and they have 5 agents.
Okay.
Okay. But let's pause for a minute. Let's go over here. Take a look at their average sales price. If you're Dan McCannon, who's in a market where your average sales price is what, Dan?
About 550 or 600. Depends on the town, but yeah.
Much harder to do these kind of numbers. Ed Stroud, these numbers look like yours, don't they?
Oh yes, baby. Maybe
For
even
average-
a little better some days.
For average sales price, I mean, their average sales price is 262. That's pretty close to you, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And
We're
so
280, 290.
your numbers on a per agent, per production, productivity piece looks different, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So here are some truths. I don't believe these are capital T truths. These are lowercase t truths. Please write down these truths. Truth number one, your average sales price often determines the number of transactions that will be sold. Have you ever noticed? I was in New York last week for the NASDAQ bell ringing with Real, and then I went to a conference in Vegas later in the week. It was called Forward. It was like the best conference I've been to. It was so good. But I was at these things, and if you're Dan, you talk about your volume. If you're Ed, you talk about your transaction count. You notice that? Like there's always this interesting flex that we do as teams where we talk about the thing that appears bigger, but really it doesn't tell the whole story. Okay. But I want to be clear on this is your average sales price determines the success. Number two, you cannot measure all agents equally. I think that's a truth that you have to understand. So in that, you're going to put a subsection. So number two, subsection A, new agents, 0 to 6 months. 0 deals. Subsection B, kind of new agents, 6 to 12 months. 3 to 6 deals. Subsection C, 1 to 2 year agents, 12 deals. Subsection D, veteran agents, 2+ years, 18 to 24 deals. Now, those numbers I just told you are based on the average sales price. As I've studied teams throughout this entire industry, that's based on the average sales price of $422,000, which was in, I believe by the end of 2023, that was the average sales price in the United States. If you're in a market where your average sales price is higher than that, you can expect those numbers I just told you to be less. If you're in a market where your average sales price is less than that, you can expect those numbers to be higher for transaction count. Again, 0 to 6 months, 0 deals. 6 to 12 months, 3 to 6. 12 to 24 months, 12 transactions. And 24+ months, 18 to 24. Those of you that have been in this game, the average sales price is $422,000. That was the United States average sales price. And as I've studied teams and gang, I have studied over and over and over and over again, not just the teams that I coach, but the teams that I learn from. Somebody please tell me you think I'm right on these numbers, or tell me you think that I'm off on these numbers. Don't be shy.
I think you're dead on.
Yeah.
I think those
I
are
do.
spot on.
Agreed.
Okay.
And there's always an asterisk on every category. I mean, you get that one agent or whatever, but I think traditionally that's what you're going to see over time with multiple agents in those spots.
Yeah, I agree too. I think the only thing that is missing is like he was saying, a true top producer, which doesn't fit any of them all.
Yep. Al, you said you think that a vet can go higher. Let me give you a couple of scenarios in which you can't measure the same. Is let's say you have an agent that does 24 deals a year, and then that turns into an agent that does 36 deals a year. There's a good chance you're probably paying that agent a higher commission, or there's a good chance that that agent is your biggest flight risk. Okay. And so for teams These are the numbers that we have to look at. Okay. Now let's go to number 3. I gave you number 1. I gave you number 2. Now let's go to number 3. As we're trying to figure out and look at that spreadsheet to say what stories are told. Here's the question you put for number 3. If I hire 10 agents, how many make it? It's a really interesting question, isn't it? I see 2, I see 3, I see 4. If you hired Al Iverson's team, I'd probably say 4 or 5 make it on Al's team. Al has a proven system to get somebody into production right away and to get great success. Al, does that feel fairly accurate, or am I just buttering you up?
No, well, first of all, I appreciate the butter, but yes, I think it's we try to do a really good job on the interviewing process, because if I throw too many numbers at it, we're spending a lot of time in training and a lot of time in these people, and it will disrupt our organization to the point we don't like it. So we really try to vet out in advance those that we think will make it, and we take a risk on them. Because initially, those first 2 years for us, we feel like we're pouring into them, and it costs us a lot of time and money and production, because we take ourselves out of production to train. So it's very important that we find the right people that we believe in.
Mm-hmm. So such a good framing. Let's go back to this spreadsheet, because this is going to start telling you some stories. Okay. This team, remember I said the husband and wife are in production, and then they have 5 other people that are in production. So 7 people are averaging 20 transactions a month. That means they're averaging 3 transactions per agent per month. I can tell you that they have no new agents on their team in the last 18 months. So that's a truth that you need to know. It's an assumption you maybe could or couldn't make, but as we start understanding this story and you start understanding your numbers, you can all of a sudden say, why are we not selling anything? And it's, you look and you're like, oh, because I have all 6 to 12 month agents. I have agents that have not yet fully developed. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how much time and energy does it take to fully develop an agent? If the average agent in the United States sells, I think it's 6 homes a year, I think it's going to be until an agent sells probably 18 homes, 3 years worth of experience until they fully got it. So maybe I'd write down, until an agent gets to 18 homes in a year, they don't got it yet. Those of you with teenagers, if your 14 or 15-year-old starts driving a car, and you're like, well, they've watched me drive for a really long time, and they've now been driving for 3 months, I think that they got it. Dear God, stay off the road. And yet we take people and we just throw them and we let go of all these things. One of the main problems in your world is that your people are undertrained. Period, hard stop. There's 3 things that are going to determine an agent's success. Write this down. 3 things that are going to determine an agent's success. I stole this from Sharon, by the way. It's skill, it's effort, and it's opportunity. Opportunity comes from your database. It comes from the agent's database. It comes from marketing and social media. It comes from all the things. And by the way, opportunity is harder today than it was 2 years ago. But I think we should have 0 conversations on our teams about opportunity. 0. Because I think that there's opportunity everywhere, and you'll determine the success of the opportunity based on skill and effort. Let me use this as an example. Let's say you're going to chop down a tree, and you have your agent has all the effort in the world. They're going to swing that axe until they can't swing that axe anymore. But if that axe is dull, that tree is not going to get chopped down. I call that person a try-hard. Is they're just doing all the things, they're going through the motions, they're trying, but their axe isn't sharp. I led this by saying, I think most of our agents are dramatically and tragically undertrained and unskilled. If you're not role playing at least 3 days a week, your agents are losing. If you're not in the trenches with them, helping them to sharpen their axe every day, what you're doing right now, this is axe sharpening, isn't it? But let me give some framework and some fodder for this, because people need to understand how rare it is to voluntarily show up to get better. And by the way, if you want to figure out who your future A players are, they are your hand raisers. They are the people that will come to something that is optional, not mandatory. If you want to create a deciphering period and space for your people, make your things optional, not mandatory, and you will very quickly see which of those are hungry. But here's the framework: is there are 20,000 plus agents at Real. On top of those 20,000 plus agents, my guess is the network that Hatch Coaching has is a network of about 6,000. So let's just say that's 25,000 people altogether. Of the 25,000 people that we've invited to this for today, outside of me, there are 32 of you here. We are dealing with like 0.1% that are showing up to say they want to get better. Don't you think your agents are that same way? And so if you don't have a world that is consistently helping them to get better, yes, by mandatory show up for this or you don't get any at-bats. Yes, by that. And by creating hand-raising unique spots, because this group here, gang, if you want my time outside of this, I'll give it to you. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to give to you. I'm trying to help you to win, because I want to show up for the hand raisers. And I will say this, because one of the reasons why you're losing with your team is because you're trying to get the people that don't give a flying crap to show up. And you're spending so much energy, giving so much time to the people that aren't interested in being great. Their words say they want to be great, but their actions are everything.
Pumpkin Plan.
Yeah, there's a book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, and it articulates this at a really high accord of give all your attention to your big pumpkins, to the ones that are showing up. It is one of my favorite leadership books, and it's actually a sales book, but it's a leadership book mentality. Stop wasting your time and your energy on potential. Okay. So I'm going to bounce back to that spreadsheet in a moment, but I want to make sure that I'm tying all this together, because we're talking about numbers and we're talking about working smarter, but we have to understand the heart and the why behind all this. If you need to sell more houses, you need these things. Please write this down. If you need to sell more houses, you need these things. And this is the only time I'm going to talk about actually selling more houses, because everything else is about making more money on the houses and the things that we sell. But number one is you need more agents to sell more houses. You need more agents. But remember, look at what we talked about just a moment ago. New agents in the first 6 to 12 months aren't going to impact your bottom line whatsoever. In fact, they're going to drain you of your time and take away from your income producing activities with those new agents. It's a dangerous, slippery slope. Number two, you need sharper axes. Number three, you need better systems. Make sense so far? Because we're going to go in and try to unpack this with really great accord. Final call. Any other thoughts on what we see here for just the highlighted categories? See none.
Oh,
yeah.
Just
go
the
ahead.
Highlighted. Oh, no, you said just the highlighted.
Just the highlighted. Yep. Just the highlighted. Okay. Let's take a look. Transaction fees. How many of you are charging transaction fees? I remember the first time I stared at a transaction fee, and the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time. And I'm like, I can't charge a transaction fee. That's selfish. And then I watched my profit margin go from this to this to this to this to this. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's okay if I make money. Is it okay if we make money, guys? I hope so. I hope so. If you are committed to having a full breath of oxygen in order to lead your team, you have to keep profit and transaction fees at the forefront. Most of you here are saying, yes, you're collecting. Here's, and Kaima, you asked a great question. My clients, if you did a cost average here and you took a look, they were here charging $3.95 a file. Buys and sells charging $3.95. I started to put pressure on them here. And I said, hey, instead of charging $3.95, you should charge $4.95 because it's actually going to sound the exact same to the consumer. Anything under $500 sounds the same. Anything 501 to 1,000 sounds the same. So if you're going to charge $5.95, charge $8.95. If you're going to charge $3.95, charge $4.95. But I think there's a chance. And they started charging more. And so they've done about 100 transactions with 100 extra dollars. And that's led to $10,000 extra for them. Gang, take a look. They've made 50 grand in 6 months on transaction fees. They'll make 100 grand by the end of the year on transaction fees. Holy cow. This is a zero expense piece to it. Okay, I'm not going to belabor that point anymore. Let's look at the average sales price. What story do you see right here on the average sales price that we need to pay attention to? Unmute yourself. Let me hear it.
It's low.
Yeah, which is reflective of their market. What else?
I also think
Oh,
I also
Mercy,
think
go
that it's inconsistent because you have seen them like pretty high in both in January and May. So I think that there is a way that they can maintain or get closer to that because it's still happening. You know, they're still getting at a higher level.
You know, the story behind this is they had $1 million deal here in January.
Okay.
And in May, they had an $800,000 deal.
Okay, that's it.
You know, one of the other things, let's take a look at May. Take a look. 15 listings, 9 buys. Do you understand? Please write this down. Your average sales price will be higher on listings than they will be on buyers. Your average sales price will be higher on listings than it will be on buyers. Now, there will, of course, be exceptions to that. But traditionally, listings will be a higher average sales price. Anybody disagree with that statement? Okay. Okay.
I agree, Eric. I don't know if it's a topic for this week. We can touch separate too, but I will be curious to see splits, particularly post settlement, you know, with everybody looking forward to get listings, and particularly in teams where we tend to do a lot of things 50-50. Would love to get your opinion, but again, don't want to take you out of.
Yep. I think that will be a conversation for down the road. I'll just answer it in the purest form I can, Mercy. I think that if you're going to run your numbers with the hopes of paying your agents as much as you possibly can, 50-50 is a really easy spot. But I don't know if you need to start at 50-50. I think 50-50 is like the highest you pay someone. Remember, let's go back to the conversation I had with Al 20 minutes ago about those high producers. If you have somebody doing 36 or 48 deals a year, you're probably paying them a higher split. But hey, make this note. Everything is earned, nothing is given. On your team, everything is earned, nothing is given. That needs to become scripture in your world. If somebody wants a higher split, let's take Zillow as an example. If somebody wants a higher split on a Zillow deal, if you say no to them, they could be potentially a flight risk. Because they're like, well, I got Carbooti's team that's offering to pay me 60%. And you're only offering me to pay 50%, right? Like, it's super easy to jump when somebody just sees that. And I love, instead of saying no to someone, I say yes when. Yes, I want to pay you higher on Zillow too. When your conversion is north of 15% on Zillow, by the way, the Zillow national average is 7%. When your conversion is above 15%, I'm going to pay you an extra 15%. Now, all of a sudden, you're creating an abundance give, which is also coming from your abundance on that. And so everything is earned, nothing is given. Somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to earn a higher split on my sphere. The answer is yes, I want you to earn a higher split on your sphere as well. Once you've done 20 sphere deals in a calendar year, on deal 21 and beyond, I'm going to pay you an extra 20% because I want you to win when I win. All of a sudden, now this person's a partner with you. But for the most part, Mercy, going back to your question, for the most part, 50-50 is probably the highest you should pay an agent outside of those yes wins examples that I just gave. But I think your new agent, it's irresponsible of you to pay them 50-50. Because how much time are you giving them? And their conversion rate is probably not going to be 7% on Zillow. It's going to be 4% on Zillow. And they're actually costing you money. And so show them how they earn a chance to get to 50-50. Make sense?
Makes total sense. Actually, I just wanted to say this to you and to everybody else, but two things that I like, it's kind of like rules in my business were given by you way back. Earn but not given. I mean, everything is earned, not given. And the pumpkin plan. I mean, those things have been
I say the same crap over and over, Mercy, and people eventually catch on.
No, it is extremely valuable.
Good.
Extremely valuable.
Thank you for that. I want to go back to this. Let's go back to the story here. Okay. We're now on sales volume, average commissions. Okay. Yes, we know that their average sales price isn't awesome. I think the thing that tells the greatest story here is average commission. I think this is something that you as team leaders are not monitoring well enough. If you're monitoring your average commission percentage really intensely, type "that's me" into the chat box. But I don't think most people are monitoring and adjusting their behavior based on this. Is anybody? Ashley is, Dan is. That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been something that since day one of me building my team, I monitored. Is my average commission, because I taught my listing agents how to get paid more. Up until August 17th or whatever that magical day is, almost all of our broker commission on the buy side has come simply based on what the listing agent felt like paying us. And now we're in a different season. We're in a season where you can actually role play and train your agents to always get a 3%, to always get a 3.5%, to collect transaction fees, to go in and not let it be reliant on what the other side is paying. But guess what? This takes time. This takes energy. The topic of today is how to double your profit without selling another home. And if you're okay averaging 2% on what you make on a buy, or averaging 2.5% on what you make on a sell, if you're in a price point like this, like gang, this is painfully low. This is, in my world, if your average sales price is $1 million, this is pretty good. But if your average sales price is this sucks. And so what do you do when you study all your numbers and then you see that something sucks? what do? You take action. And the action you can't take is by going to your team and saying, all right, everybody, we're now going to charge 3%. All your files need to say 3%. Let me know what questions you have. And instead, if you're trying to get to 3%, do you realize that you're going to have to train on that 3 to 5 days a week for 1 to 2 months? Make this note. If you want to make a change, it will take 3 to 5 days a week for 1 to 2 months. That means 12 to roughly 30 touches and trainings, 12 to 30 trainings. Anybody disagree with me on that? Again, this is not my capital T truth that I know because I read it somewhere else. This is my learned experience in this industry for almost 2 decades. Now, I don't have to go, Kaima, I will shoot that spreadsheet to you. I need you to understand this, that you don't have to go and spend another dime, but you do have to spend much more intentional time to work on this stuff. Time over dime. Now, you may be saying, Eric, I don't have any time. Anybody telling yourselves that narrative right now is, Eric, I don't have any time? Well, I can tell you that there's about half of the meetings that you're in that you don't need to be in. I can tell you that if you don't have an agent partner doing your production side of things, you're never going to have time to work on the team. And so if you're going to put anything in order, you need to put in order that your personal production needs to have an army of support built around that before you build a team. Most of you are already in it. You've already built the team. But if you're telling yourself, I don't have any time to work on this 12 to 30 trainings with my team just to work on getting their average commission up. If that's what you're telling yourself, then I don't know if you're ready to have a team yet. Or you're going to get limited results and you won't be able to change that percentage. Might not be what you want to hear, but it's the truth that I know today. Okay. Let's take a look. This is the last category I'm going to concentrate on right now. And then next week, we will continue this. But let's look at average COGS. This is cost of goods sold. If you remember, I said MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, says that you pay 20% to a listing agent, 40% to a buyer agent, which averages to be 30% on a balanced business. They're averaging 47%. When you're doing this, I want to challenge you to try to average anywhere from 45 to 50%. I think that is a targeted, healthy number for the type of team that I'm talking about right here. An average of 45 to 50%. Why 45? Well, because you're going to always have new agents that aren't making a higher percentage. And maybe you're going to have some real vet agents who are earning, after they've earned it each year, they're earning a higher split also. And so as you break that down, it should average under 50%. If you're averaging over 50%, you probably don't have enough new agents. Or you're paying your people a lot. And if you're paying them a lot, the only story that we can tell is if we go to the expense category to see if you're over giving to them, both in your expenses and your commission that you're paying them. Al has a great point there, right? Getting time back in your life is really essential. I sent out a writing last week talking about how to run really great team meetings. And I'll tell you this, if you take that writing seriously, and if you take team meetings as something that is a lever and a tool to help you with these things, you can now start compounding your trainings. So as an example, most people do a 30 or 60-minute team huddle or team meeting every week. But your team huddle and team meeting looks like this. Hey, everybody, what are we celebrating today? And then for 10 minutes, everybody says what they did for the weekend. After they talk about what they did for the weekend, then a bunch of announcements that could be an email are shared. And then people talk about new listings. And then there's wasted time with very little actual training involved. And then you talk about the upcoming client event that you're doing. That again could be an email. And then you just spent an hour. You're like, well, shoot, how am I ever going to get time back in my life? Because I had this really important team meeting. There's two purposes of team meetings. Put them down, write it down. Number one, connection. Your people need to feel like they are getting aligned with you. The purpose of connection is for alignment, that everybody can row the boat together. It's a place where you build trust. It's a place where you laugh. It's a place where you connect. So that first 10 or 15 minutes still is super important. But I think you need to vary it up. I think you need to get more creative and energetic with your time together. And so you come in and you're going to say, hey, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to put Tracy on the hot seat. Tracy, for 15 minutes, because you're having the best year you've ever had in real estate, we're going to ask you questions for 15 minutes so we can all learn what you're doing. Tracy feels like a superstar, and everybody else gets to learn from the star agent that's there. All of a sudden, it's now creating a really great connection piece. So the first thing for team meetings is connection, and the purpose of connection is alignment. The second thing for team meetings is growth. If your meeting doesn't have a growth element to it, you're not doing the meeting correctly. And so remember, I said it's going to take 12 to 30 trainings in order to have your agents start charging 3%, or on listings start charging more, or to increase their transaction fees. Well, where do you think you should be doing these trainings? In your team meetings. You need to go in as the most prepared you have ever been to go into each one of those meetings. Do you think I showed up today just casually wondering, like, I hope I figure something I'm going to talk about, right? Like, I'm going to wait and see what the room wants, and then I'm going to casually do things. No, I got lists for days, y'all. I'm fired up as the day is long because I came in prepared to help you to win. Are you doing that with your team meetings? Are you showing up with a fire in your belly for this, with an agenda, with planned topics, all those things? Because most of the time we're not. And so we got to do better. Next week, and we're going to, before I go and pitch, and I promise you, I'm going to send you the spreadsheet. I'm going to do that. I need each of you in the chat box to give me your biggest aha or takeaway. I'm going to do 10 or 15 minutes of question and answer and that sort, because I need this to be customized for you, but I need everybody to give me the gift of a biggest aha or takeaway and put that in the chat box here. Next week, I'm going to go into expense management. Next week, I'm going to go into how to get your production scaled. Next week, I'm going to go into these detailed numbers even more so to help you to win financially. Thank you for the things you're putting in here. Keep it coming, because this gives me a framework of how I can continue to grow this. I'm going to give you the link to the spreadsheet here so you have this. John, what do you got for me, bro?
I want to challenge you on something.
Please.
And yes, I love doing this because it's an opportunity for both of us to grow. So I love what you said about making things optional. And then the people that show up there, right, those are the people that want to win. What do you do? And I'm curious, maybe across the board, what do you do if you have people that we call them coffee club people? Like, they just show up, they're at every meeting, they participate, but they don't really produce a lot of results.
Yep. One of my favorite things to talk about, and I know nothing about farming, but one of my favorite things to talk about is if you have a stable filled with racehorses and you put a couple donkeys in there, those donkeys will run faster than they ever have before. But if you have a stable filled with donkeys and you put a couple of racehorses in there, those racehorses will quickly resemble the asses they surround themselves with. And so, John, I'd ask you, is your stable more racehorses or more donkeys?
We are, I would say probably about 50-50 now.
Okay.
And in the last year, partly because listening to you and all the cool people here at Real, we've really focused our attention on getting racehorses. And I would say that we've gotten to that 50-50 mark, and we're being more intentional moving forward about racehorses.
So let's say this, because your question is a really valid one, John. If you have the people that are the coffee drinkers, they're showing up for the voluntary things, but they're not actually doing the thing. I would use all your language to only speak to top performers.
Okay.
I think that that's a really important thing. Let me give you an example. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I got more feedback on this than I did of most of the things I've said. So it bears repeating. Is if you're trying to build an organization that has elite agents of people that are doing 20, 30, 40 deals a year on average, and you're trying to build an organization that allows people to come in and do the status, or like not even meet the status quo, but to just kind of like find their way. I have a coaching client who has a really large organization, and he operates this way. He has his high producers, and then he has his people that just kind of like will sell a couple of homes a year. And his mentality is, I can keep the couple of homes a year agents around because they're not taking any of my resources. So I would ask you the question, John, is your organization providing resources for both of these groups? And if it is, it won't work. The only way it works is if you provide resources here, but not here. And by resources, I mean leads. By resources, I mean custom time. Group time is not custom time. What I'm doing here with you all is group time. John, the one-on-one that we had a month or two ago, that's custom time. You give differently to different people. And this group can't ever take your custom time, and they can't ever take any dollars from you. They can fit into the mold and they'll kind of make it. But if you're trying to build both organizations, until you reach probably an agent count of 40 or more, you can't do both. This is a truth that I believe to be inherent, is you can't do both. You can't build an organization with less than 40 agents that has a really great track record of high production and a bunch of people coming to hang out, hoping that they sell a couple of houses. I think that the racehorses and the donkeys, they start getting taken over by donkeys too easily. And so all the conversations, all the language, if you do have both, all the language needs to just speak to the racehorses. And do not give any of your custom time or dollars to the donkeys. Once they've earned it, then you can. Otherwise, they fall into a system.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. What else you got for me, kids? John, Jonathan Carbuti is a buddy of mine out of the New England area. John's not with Real, so he doesn't jump into these trainings all the time. But you have come here, obviously, with a curiosity of how to make more money with the current agents that you have. John, are you comfortable sharing what your profit percentage is for your team? Do you know that?
Yeah, I'm around. Oh,
no.
Which one?
Carbuti.
Oh, yeah. I'm around 20%.
20%. That's a good number.
Yeah.
That's a good number. Are you paying yourself? You're paying yourself a salary?
Always have for 2.5 years. So almost going on 3 years now.
Are you paying yourself commission for the deals that you do?
No.
So you're not making
I'm structured a little bit differently. I'm not doing any deals. I'm out of production.
Okay. Awesome. By the way, if you're like John and you're out of production, when you give a referral to your team from a past client or sphere, you should be charging 25 to 35% for that referral. Many of you are not doing that. If you give a referral, if your past buddy comes to you and says, John, I want to work with you. And it's like, hey, bro, I'm not in production, but you can work with Noel. Noel's a great agent on my team. Noel gets charged 25 or 35% off the top on that deal, just like Zillow would take, just like Dave Ramsey would take, just like if I sent you a referral would take. You need to protect your profit margin with that, and you need to protect it. But John, I'm curious, you had said you need more agents to sell more homes.
I always need more agents, and I can relate to what you were saying about, you could only get so much production out of one agent, and obviously you're not going to make somebody productive who doesn't want to be productive, but you're definitely facilitating an environment to be productive is basically what you're saying, Eric. And I've consciously focused on recruiting for the last 6 months, especially since the beginning of February, and it's made a huge impact to our bottom line. And recruiting the right agents, obviously. And I was going after a lot of the newer agents originally. Now I've been going after the experienced agents, and it amazes me how many experienced licensed agents out there who are a right fit for our team. And I had to kind of change my mentality. And they've all impacted our bottom line. So yeah.
That's a couple of huge ahas there, gang. And I want to make sure it's not missed on you. There are good veteran seasoned agents who could be a great fit for your team. That is a truth that exists. Another truth that exists is you're the only person in your world that can attract them. All right. Here's another Eric Hatch truth, whether it be your truth or not, doesn't matter. I think that hiring a recruiter or a sales manager to recruit is wasted money. I used to think differently. I used to think that, man, a really great sales manager, a really great recruiter is going to make me money. Because I'm like, man, if they can bring in an extra 20 agents a year, and then I start compounding that between revenue share and what they're doing on my team and all these other things, like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to hire a recruiter. Ed, you met Shelly on my team, right? Shelly was the most dynamic, fantastically energetic, likable person you would ever find. She unfortunately passed away in December, had a hole in her heart and passed away at the age of 32. Super heartbreaking for our team, but she sucked as a recruiter. 12 months into the game, she still sucked because she wasn't me. And unless someone has earned reputation in this business, it is really, really, really hard to be a great recruiter. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's really, really, really hard. And yet, if Jonathan Carbuti calls me and I know he's like the top team leader in the state, and that phone rings or that text message comes from John, all of a sudden I'm bringing a higher level of clout and credibility because John just reached out to me. If somebody calls on behalf of John, it's diluted. If somebody calls and says I'm on John's team, it's diluted. But if John calls me, oh my gosh. Now, that doesn't mean John has to run through the entire process. That doesn't mean that John has to be the person that is holding their hand through the entire thing. You can put them into the system, but you are the one that casts the first line. You're the one that sets the hook. You don't have to reel it in, but you're the one that has to set the hook.
Eric, question on that, because Shelly obviously was, super outgoing. Did she ever bring you people? Because I feel like our organization right now, what we're seeing is I've got about 4 or 5 people that I do an agent attraction call before this meeting with my internal team. And they show up and they say, hey, we've got these people. This morning I took notes. I've got 13, 14 people we're talking about. Are they coming to Real, or are they coming to our team, or both? But I feel like that's been our best way so far, is to send those 5 agents out plus myself, bring them back and get me introduced so I can take that to the next level.
Shelly's role, as we thought it, and I think as most people think of a recruiter, is to be the one to do everything.
Okay.
She went to our agents and said, who can I talk to? But when she would talk to them, she didn't have the name,
cred.
reputation, and the value
Yeah.
that I would carry or that you would carry. The reason why you're winning in those is because you're going to the meetings.
Right.
So
right.
doesn't matter who casts the line. You're the one that sets the hook. You're the one
Right.
that
That's the
all of a
key,
sudden
yes.
establishes that value. So it doesn't matter if it's introduction by proxy or if it's introduction from your own relationship. I think that you as a team leader need to be involved in setting the hook. You need to be the one to make that person feel wanted and seen and special. Doesn't have to be for the entire process, but it means that when we're looking at our job responsibilities, if agent attraction is a part of our plan and our play, our responsibilities have to be focused more around agent attraction. Bar none, hands down. It is like, if you said, Eric, what are the most important things that a team leader does? Number one is lead generation. Our lead generation is not for our personal production. That's a different business. Our lead generation is agent attraction. Lead follow-up, that can be done by the system. So I think the number two responsibility, and this is in order, the number two responsibility for a team leader is to get your current people better. Number one job is lead gen. Number two is sharpen axes. Number three, Al, if you scroll up, you'll see that I have the link that I put in here for the spreadsheet. I'll put it here again for you. Number three is to enhance the right culture. Three main jobs is to lead gen for new talent, sharpen swords, and enhance the culture. Enhancing the culture means that we can't motivate our agents. We can't. John Maxwell was once asked, John, how do you motivate your people? He said, I don't. I hire motivated people. So if you hire the wrong people, none of this works anyways. It's just wasted time and energy. But like, your job is to create an environment that someone is most likely to win in, which is why it's your job to help enhance the culture. Everybody else's fingerprints are on the culture as well. But if you are not a main culture keeper, you are letting an accidental culture develop. Your culture needs to be on purpose, not accidental. All right. We're out of time, gang. Was this good? This helped today? Okay. We will get after this next week again. Appreciate you all.